here's my theory on the economy. Why is the economy the way it is now? Why is it so complex in so many different ways? And I think if you really take it back to the very beginning, when you had the hunter and the gatherer, and you had the woman or the mother stayed at home and tended the child or reared the child and cooked dinner and things like that. Now, if you take it back millions of years ago to the time that the human was progressing through the time, like the ape, and then slowly the human form started to progress as time goes by. And as time goes by, over hundreds of thousands of years, you wound up having the mother who gives the birth to the child breastfeed the child and cook for the family, be it in a hut or be it in living in the trees when they were progressing through the point of being monkey, ape into human form, or living in caves or whatever have you. And the man or the male, what he did was he hunted. He had to get off his ass and actually go hunt and figure out ways to take down an elephant or take down a cheetah, a gazelle, or even a horse, to tame a horse. Eventually they learned how to tame a horse, to ride a horse. But that comes a little bit later in our progressive humanity, I guess you could say. But in the very beginning is my main point here before I move on, and that is the male had to get off his ass, and through actually moving his physical body into motion, therefore he wound up going into the aspect of hunting. And so he had to hunt for the family, had to kill for the family in order for the human family or his human family to exist or to live, to survive. And as time goes by, over a long period of time, tens of thousands of years, if not hundreds of thousands of years, the brain started to develop more. And as time goes on, the male, the hunter, started to figure out how to strategize on how to take down this bear, or to take down a gazelle or a cheetah or a leopard, a tiger, a fox, a wolf, whatever have you. And then he learned how to poison arrows, or try to put a rock in some twine that he was able to shape around a rock and twirl it around and throw it at the animal and knock him out. Eventually, like I said, the arrows with the poison, he learned, whoa, we better not eat that berry because that other human just died from that berry. Oh, wait, hold it here. I have a good idea. If it kills a human, it'll probably kill that damn animal over there. So he figured out a way to take that poison berry or whatever and put it on the end of a arrow tip and kill rabbits and kill foxes and whatever else have you. And as time went on, the society started to get more complex, because it wasn't just one human family. Then they started to divide into different human families, and they started to have clans and tribes, and then eventually, of course, civilizations. But in the very beginning, they only had clans and tribes and things of that nature, even though it all basically came from one bloodline, so to speak. All humans did. So anyway, so as time goes by, the clans or the tribes or whatever have you, they either collectively or individually came up with the idea of why, if he probably figured, if I just go out by myself and kill one rabbit, I only get one rabbit out of the kill. It takes me, a long time to do this. Not that time was really a concept at that time, except for sunrise, sunset kind of thing. But he probably figured, he said, why just myself go out there and kill one rabbit? Why don't I do this? Why don't I have 5 people that I employ and go out there and kill 5 rabbits, and I pay them maybe a free meal, or I pay them, I don't know, maybe some kind of rock, like some kind of stone or a gem he's found that he's collected, which eventually started that process of an economy that slowly started the process of actually an exchange system. Through the action of the physical action to kill these animals or whatever have you for survival, slowly started that exchange system. And eventually he wound up employing, so to speak, not that employment was any word back then, but employ 5 people to kill 5 rabbits, and then take those 5 rabbits, and then he got another enlightening idea. I'll take 1 rabbit to feed my family. I'll take 4 other rabbits and sell them. So that way I can not only pay my hunters to hunt more rabbits and hire, so to speak, more hunters to get more of my rabbits, or to kill more rabbits. And then he started thinking, that I got myself a business here, a business. Not these words are, probably did not exist back in those days, but the ideas were basically the same. And so he started to employ these hunters, and before you know it, he probably had about 50 hunters just working for him. Now, of course, this is probably much later on in the development of man, or woman, that is. And the woman still stayed at home and tended family and things of that nature. And because the male was making some pretty good money, he was able to give the wife some new stuff to have in the hut or in the cave, or in the, eventually they learned to chop down wood and turn it into log cabins, or some kind of wooden hut, or something or another a little bit more complex. And then they figured out eventually, of course this is much later on, that they figured out about fire and things of that nature. So we can have this room for the fire, and we can have this room to sleep in, we can have this room to go to the bathroom, or have some kind of way so the stink doesn't stay in the hut, it goes out. We don't always have to go outside and crap or piss or whatever have you, So, because, in the very beginning, humans just shit and pissed wherever they wanted to, just like animals, it's not like today, So anyway, as time went by, it got a little bit more complex, and then you wound up employing people, and to do, instead of this one person or the one male to go out there and kill 50 rabbits in a day, he figured, look, I'll give him a little bit of money. Maybe I'll give him something or another, a gem I found in the ground, or maybe a better rock to start a fire with, or some kind of flint rock, or whatever have you, whatever it may have been, whatever the exchange was there. Employ 50 people to do the job of just myself, and then I'll wind up with, if I could up the ante, maybe one hunter gets 5 rabbits during the day. So if I have 50 people, that's 250 rabbits. So therefore, he's able to sell more rabbits. And that's where it really began. And it was a very slow progression, It's not like, there's probably no incorporated ideas or incorporated names for corporations or companies back in those days. But it was mainly from an individual's point of view, saying to himself, I'm busting my ass out here. If I can get other people to do the work with me or for me, and pay them something or another, or do whatever, then it'd be a lot easier, and I can make a profit out of that. Now, as time went on, of course, as civilizations branched out, you wound up with a much more complex society, to the point that you wound up having organizations, so to speak, or in a sense, even companies in a sense. that are actually employed. And then there are those that wound up having armies, that actually wound up having power in the masses. So let's say you had 500 men of, for an army, so to speak. And that power was able to actually wind up with slaves. So humans wound up slaving others to do their work for them. And for what? Maybe a little tiny bit of water and a little bit of food and shelter. And if they didn't do it, they'd die. So that was another form of the economy that was growing, and even to this day in Sudan they have slaves. So this, is progression a long period of time. And then eventually that exchange system got a bit more complex, especially like a little much later, like with the Egyptians and with the Sumerians and with the Babylonians and the Hittites and all these other characters that started to come about, I'd say about, 10,000 BC or so. And then they got much more complex. Outside of just slaves, you also had a much more complex exchange. And it's that action or that exchange that brought us to really where we are right now. And of course now we have hedge funds, stock markets, stock exchanges, we have investments, oil companies, diamonds, gold, petroleum, uranium, everything, And it's just really a question of one guy saying to himself, and these days it's now a her. So now a woman can actually own a company if they like. So they think along the lines of what the man originally thought of, hundreds of thousands of years ago. That is, look, if I have 500 people work for me, I can get, out of those 500 people, let's say they're building, I don't know, let's say they're building this mech mod, this Apollo mech mod. And if one person did this, they probably couldn't get so many of them. But if I can get 500 people to make about 15 of these a day, that's what, I don't know what the math would be. I'm not the greatest with math. 500 times 15 he can wind up with I guess that's 75,000 of them, 75 devices, something like 75,000 devices. So you can wind up with, it's either 7,500, no, I think it's more than that, 75,000 of these mech mods in one day, with 500 workers making 15 of these mech mods a day each. So each worker out of the 500 make 15 mech mods. And then he just, figures out what it's going to cost him to do that. And then he's on each mech mod, he says, well, what I'll do is I'll just add on the cost outside of my overhead, I'll just add $3, $4, maybe $5 more on top of it, and that's sheer profit. So 500 times 75,000, you can make close to $500,000 off of just one mech mod. And that's how that whole economy concept started, all those complex ideas. So really it all started from a hunter's point of view, of saying to himself, look, I'm going out there in the hot sun killing a rabbit. If I can get somebody else to help me, or I could pay somebody somehow or another to do the work for me, then I'll be a leader of a group of people to go out there and hunt for me. And that's really what it was about. So it was really like a question of having a person have other persons work for, the operative word being for that person. And then that's how it happened. And then of course it's, the last 200 years, 300, 400 years, maybe much longer than that. I mean, you had you had queens in Egypt, you had queens in England, for thousands of years. Not thousands of years, about 1,500 years or so, 1,000 years, somewhere in there. depended upon the hereditary. If the husband dies, she becomes a queen. Anyway, and so the woman started to also employ others as well to do the work for her. And that's pretty much how it worked. But it began simply with a hunter in the very beginning that had to get off his ass, and through that action to kill that rabbit, he started thinking, holy shit, if I can get somebody else to do this for me, and I pay him something or another, some kind of exchange between me and the worker, then I could really have something here. And that's how the entire economy that we know in 2015 or 2016 was based on a guy back hundreds of thousands of years ago, a hunter that started to think that I can make a bit of a profit, I can have a gain, I can get ahead if I can get someone else to do the work for me, and I pay them something or some kind of exchange there. Maybe a better fur, or a nicer gem, or a better flintstone, or to make a fire, or whatever it may have been. And that's how we got the economy we're in now. And it's much more complex now. Now you have companies that employ 20,000 people. Now you add that up. If they're all being paid per hour, now of course the executive branches are paid by salary. But for the most part, the workers are paid by the hour, unless you're in a unionized company. But outside of that, and that's based upon whatever contract may be. But normally, typically, majority-wise, around the world even, let alone America itself, everyone's pretty much paid by the hour. And so let's say if you're paid, let's average it out, not $10 an hour, and then the owner buys the material for you. Let's say you're putting together this mech mod. So he buys all the material, you put it together, or you might even be able to make the material. He might just buy a whole bunch of copper, because this is mainly a copper mech mod outside of the white paint on here. Buy a whole bunch of copper, melt it all down, and go from there. And so all you have to do is get the workers to put the design together that he designed or she designed, and you got yourself a mech mod. And all you need is, of course, that magnet that's in there, dependent upon spring or whatever have you. And that's how we have the economy today. Anyway, guys, have a good one. Bye.